Today we are going to start reviewing the new topic called embedded system design by using microcontrollers. While we adopt a microcontroller platform, we come across several communication ports. We had already seen earlier about UART communication port. However, we are about to cover up SPI and I2C as our next topics. So these ports like SPI or I2C are very common in modern microcontrollers. These protocols were developed earlier during 70s and 80s. However, there are certain very useful features in these communication protocols, and that is the reason why we adopt even these days very widely in embedded system space. Here I have prepared a document which has been adapted and modified from sparkfun.com, and we will review SPI and I2C in quite some detail. So here we will cover the concepts behind these communication protocols. So SPI and I2C are both synchronous communication protocols. Unlike UART, this SPI or I2C communication protocols carry a clock signal in addition to data signal. So whenever you see a clock signal within a protocol or within a hardware communication protocol, you will definitely consider that as a synchronous communication protocol. Now, serial peripheral interface is the full form of SPI. This SPI protocol was originally developed by Motorola. However, this protocol has evolved over years, and we consider this serial communication platform as a serial interface bus. That means there is a group of lines, digital lines, for bidirectional communication called bus. So this SPI actually came into existence after UART. Now the obvious question, what's wrong with UART serial ports? UART sounds great. We had studied that this is an asynchronous, universal asynchronous receiver transmitter port, and this serial port, UART serial port, has certain bottlenecks. During ARM, we had seen the percentage error in UART protocol is very dangerous. In fact, it is vulnerable for data errors at the receiver side if we start transmitting at high frequencies. So there is an upper limit of frequency for UART because the percentage error may not be always 0%. You had seen the sampling of the UART signal during the last class. So this UART signal basically is good enough, but the problem here is data accuracy if you are transmitting at high speed, at the same time if you are transmitting many bits in a sequence. For example, not just one byte, but let's say hundreds or thousands of bytes at a go. So then the sampling becomes an issue unless you resynchronize it again, and this percentage error actually is very dangerous for a reliable communication. You can read through these paragraphs where they have taken an example of an ASCII character, and then they are sending this over the UART port. I think you are aware of this framing, UART framing. This is the 8-bit UART with one stop bit and a start bit. There is no parity. So the problem is high speed communication, high speed and reliable communication. Since there is an absence of clock signal, there is only data signal, TXD or RXD signals in UART. So the data becomes vulnerable to damage. Now, in order to increase reliability, SPI came into existence. But how does SPI evolve over time? SPI is called a synchronous serial communication or serial peripheral interface, it works in slightly different way than the UART port. If you look at this particular diagram, SPI port has two units like UART, so there are two microcontrollers. Similarly, in SPI you can consider two microcontrollers or one microcontroller, one peripheral device. In such case, for example, we are transferring data from one side to another. Let's say the left hand side block is the microcontroller and the right hand side block is a peripheral device. It may be a keyboard or display device. Now, if I want to update data, so in such case we are actually having unidirectional signals. That means you can have a display device only. If you have a keyboard, so some arrow directions will have to change. Assuming this is a display device which is a peripheral to a microcontroller and this is a microcontroller, then we are adopting two signal lines for transmitting a single channel data. So instead of TXT line, you can think of this data line as a TXT line, and in addition to that there is a clock signal. Now the clock runs independently, it runs at a fixed frequency typically, and you can have a data which actually gets aligned to clock signals. For example, we want to send ASCII character for this S, which is equivalent to 53. Now in case of UART, you have to always send D0 first, but in case of SPI it is not necessary always to send D0. Okay, it depends how your peripheral is accepting the data, whether D0 first mode or D7 first. Assuming D0 first in this example, in this very simple example, in fact this is a simplified SPI, it's not exactly SPI. So during, if we consider D0 first, that means 53 hex has been flipped, so that means 0 1 0 1 for 5 and 0 0 1 1 for 3. So for this data, you can see the clock stays in the idle state, which is logic 1 in this example, and it makes a transition from 1 to 0, and then from during 0 to 1 we are sampling the data. So that means during this rising edge, what is the value of the data line? So that is to be considered. So the receiver will consider during this clock rising edge, this data remained 1, so that means the value of data is 1. Same thing, the clock comes down and again goes up, and during going up, so the data is read by the receiver, which is the peripheral device, so another 1. But during 0, so for reading 0, so while the clock is coming down, at that time you should also make transition on your data in case you need to change the value from 1 to 0 or 0 to 1. So during the falling edge, so data change takes place, and then during the rising edge again, the data sampling takes place. That means the data becomes 0 in this case during the next rising edge. So the same process gets repeated over multiple cycles, and as a result you can transfer 8 bits of information. Now look at some differences from UART. There is no start bit, there is no stop bit. That means you are reducing the extra bits which were present originally in UART. So that way you can save some timing. In addition, there are two hardware lines, whereas here there are two hardware lines, whereas in UART there was only one hardware line for this similar data transfer. So this is called a synchronous communication or a clocked synchronous communication. Okay. Now the point is, this particular mode of communication actually is, although it is synchronized with clock, but the problem over here is that it is only unidirectional. Okay. Now if you want to receive data, you will also do the same thing, except the data pin direction will be opposite. So the direction of this green arrow will be opposite if you want to receive. So you have to send clock signal always from the microcontroller or whoever is the master device. That master device will always send the clock signal to the peripheral device. Okay. Whereas the data could originate either from microcontroller or it may also originate from the peripheral. But this line, data line, is never bidirectional. Even clock line is also never bidirectional in case of synchronous communication. So this kind of data transfer actually happens through a shift register. So in the background there is always a shift register, whether it is UART or SPI, but the shift register is controlled by either clock which is coming outside the chip, or there is a clock inside the chip which is not available outside the chip. Like UART, the clock is also there for which is clocking the shift register inside the microcontroller, but this clock is not available outside the chip. So that is the problem, why we actually need higher speed communication along with a clock with synchronous communication. Now let's look at some terminology. So there are several microcontrollers who actually adopt slightly different terminology than each other for representing the similar or same SPI communication lines. Some microcontrollers represent lines as MOSI or master output slave input, which is also called as controller output peripheral input. So microcontroller is the controller, peripheral may be display devices or other devices. The second pin is MISO, which is called master input slave output, also called as controller input peripheral output, just opposite to the first one. Then serial clock SCK, so this term is common actually all through. In fact, I can just delete this. And CS chip select or SS or SSEL. So this slave select or chip select is the one and the same thing. So these are the four basic communication lines that an SPI protocol adopts. Okay, and remember all the signals are unidirectional, either going from microcontroller to the peripheral device or other way around. Okay, so let's look at this, how we use these signals. So in this particular diagram we are showing the signal except the CS. Okay, so chip select is not shown, assuming your peripheral is on the right, microcontroller on the left, and the peripheral is enabled to do communication. Now look at this, SCK is going to SCK, that means serial clock is common and it is originating from the master device or controller device and then going to the peripheral one or the device to be controlled through SPI lines. Now COPI or MOSI, it is the same thing, COPI or MOSI, and CIPO or MISO, that is again saying MISO or CIPO. So now look at the direction again, COPI and SCK, it looks similar to the previous diagram, right? Clock and data. Whereas the only addition in this case is CIPO, which is on the master side, and CIPO from the peripheral side. So they are connected, whereas the direction of this arrow is opposite to the green arrow. So green arrow will take data from microcontroller to your peripheral or slave device, and the blue arrow will take data in the opposite direction from your peripheral to your microcontroller, whereas clock should always be there. So you have to synchronize the communication signals along with your clock. It is technically possible to have simultaneous data transfer between these two devices, like over the green line as well as at the same time over the blue line, but typically all peripheral devices may not be able to support such communication, but it is technically possible. So let's look at this timing waveform for this SPI like signal where we are not considering the chip select. Again, we are considering D0 first in this approach, but it is not always necessary to have D0 first in SPI. There could be D7 first as well. There are peripherals who take D7 first as well, and that thing is actually is not discussed over here. We are considering D0 first in this particular example. It depends on the microcontroller and the peripheral whether they support D7 first or not. Okay. Now in this example we can see that the SCK is an idle state at logic 1, and then it makes similar transition, and during low to high transition during the rising edge the data is sampled. So let's say we are sending again that same 53 that we had seen in the previous example, and there are 8 clock cycles, 8 rising edges. So you can see 8 rising edges, and there are 8-bit data which are getting sampled during the rising age. So COPI data is going from microcontroller to your peripheral device. Now, after sending this COPI data or MOSI, which is again the same thing, suppose the peripheral device is responding with some acknowledgement or some status information in a byte format. So this thing is shown with on this COPI line. So CIPO is actually remaining silent while COPI is sending some data, and other way around or vice versa. While COPI is not sending data, at that time only CIPO is allowed to send data. Okay, again, this is not an absolute necessity. There could be simultaneous data transfer here as well, but given you are instructing something to the peripheral and then peripheral is responding, it's a query response kind of arrangement which has been shown. So this is the query made by the microcontroller to the peripheral. Now peripheral is responding to the microcontroller with some values. So COPI line shows some another value. So in this example, they are showing ASCII of F, which is 46. So 0, 1, 0, 0, and then 6 is 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0. Okay, so 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0. So this is basically 46. So in a reverse manner. So this 46 again gets sampled during the rising age. So whenever the microcontroller is sending the high to low transition of the clock, so the peripheral is adjusting its data to be sampled. Now the data remains stable during the rising age, and again if you need to change anything, you do it while the clock is falling, at the falling edge. Okay, so this is how we can synchronize a data signal or couple of data signals with a clock. Likewise, there are possibilities that you can have more than two data lines or unidirectional data lines which are sampled to the same clock signals. Now let's come to the chip select signal. So chip select is the method to say to make a peripheral device enable. Again, in this diagram, consider your microcontroller on the left and peripheral on the right. So this microcontroller is controlling the peripheral along with a chip select signal. So the first three signals remain as it is, as we have seen in the previous figure. Whereas a chip select signal has been added, it is nothing but enabling the peripheral. So your master is saying that get yourself enabled or get yourself out of power down mode and then start communicating with me. So that's what the microcontroller is indicating through the chip select. So this typical 4-line communication channel or 4-bit information or 4 physical connection wires are required in a standard SPI communication protocol. Let's look at the timing diagram. So in this timing diagram, we can see the chip select first comes 1 to 0. Actually, this can be called as chip select bar also, but it depends how the terminology has been set by the manufacturer. Okay, so strictly speaking, this is CS bar. Now, when there is a CS bar signal or chip select signal coming, so enable state means 0, selected state is 0, and disabled state is 1. So that's why I am calling it as chip select bar. But for simplicity, they have indicated a simple chip select. So before even SCK starts to clock, you should turn the chip select signal into logic 0 state in this case, where it enables the peripheral. Once you enable the peripheral, give a little gap. If you extend this line on time, it will come somewhere over here. So after you apply chip select at this time point, then you start giving your clock signals. And with clock signals, you can first send that ASCII character of 53, or it may be any other ASCII character, and later on you can also get a response code from the peripheral device to the microcontroller. Once the response is over, then the microcontroller should turn off the chip select. That means after the last character sent, you have to basically disable the chip select. That means you disable the peripheral. So peripheral is no longer will be able to receive the signal. So if your chip select is 1 in this case, and then if you apply a clock signal, then the data will be lost. It will never be transmitted over COPA or CIPO line, or MOSI for COPA in place of COPA, or MISO in place of CIPO lines. So typical SPI timing diagram has been shown over here along with the connection diagram. Assuming that the ground for both microcontroller and the peripheral are common or shorted to each other, VDDs may or may not be shorted, but they should be compliant with the voltage levels, because logic 0 and 1 at the transmitter side should be compatible to the logic 0 and 1 on the receiver side. So you have to make sure the logic levels are compatible through the selection of proper VDD, and the ground signal must be common. If you don't short the ground on both the sides, it will cause malfunction. So these are the hardware considerations for an SPI communication line. Now you can connect multiple peripherals through the SPI protocol. Now how can you do that? You can use SCK, COPI and CIPO connected in parallel to many peripheral devices. So this is the microcontroller, and there are 3 peripherals in this example. So the 3 peripherals are having common clock signal. That means whenever the microcontroller is sending clock, all the peripherals are receiving the clock. Similarly, whenever the microcontroller is sending data from COPI to the peripherals, then all the devices will again simultaneously receive the data, but you don't want everyone to receive the same data. Although they are getting a copy, but you don't want the data to be considered inside the peripheral simultaneously. Okay, it may be the case that you are selecting any one of the display devices at a time, assuming the peripherals are all display devices. Then you want to update various information, but while sending information, everything is getting copied. Only thing which one should accept, that depends on multiple chip select signals. So there are several chip select signals which are possible, and this individual chip selects are connected one to one from microcontroller to the peripheral chip select without any branching. Okay, so there is no branching. These are exclusive signals or unique signals for every peripheral. So you can individually select any one of the peripheral and then start sending data over SCK COPI, and then that data will reach to the respective peripheral based on which chip select is activated. Okay, but not necessarily that all the chip select cannot be activated. You can also activate all the chip select at a time, or you can just have one chip select going to all 3 devices in case you want to duplicate the data to all these peripherals. Now for CIPO line, that is input line for the microcontroller and output from the peripheral devices, again you have to apply the chip select to respective device, then apply clock. After clocking, if you set up a condition by sending COPI data or any other condition internally from the peripheral, then the CIPO can receive data along with the clock signal. Okay, so their CIPO signal is conditional because you have to make sure that peripheral is able to respond whenever there is a chip select and SCK, and then if the peripheral is responding, then that data again goes to all the lines, but given CIPO output from the peripheral are tri-stated for non-chip selected devices, and it will get driven by the chip selected device, assuming chip select is applied to peripheral 2. So CIPO from peripheral 2 will go to the microcontroller, but it will also get shorted with CIPO, and this is also output, this is also output, so they will short circuit. So to prevent that short circuit between several CIPO lines, it actually the non-selected devices should be able to tri-state their CIPO line from inside. Tri-state means disconnect or switch off the connection from the peripheral internal circuitry to this external line. Otherwise there will be a short circuit or burst condition if you start sending CIPO from more than one peripheral. In that case, if there is a logic difference, 0, 1 logic difference, in that case there will be short circuit. It can cause damage. Now, it's not necessary that we should always have this serial connection, serial communication connection where SCK are in parallel COPI and CIPO are in parallel. It's not always necessary. To reduce that or to reduce the possibility of short circuit due to any mistake or any coding error, so there is something called daisy chaining method. Okay, so this is called daisy chaining method. So the daisy chained connection. In daisy chain connection, the devices are in sort of pseudo serial parallel combination. How come it is done? So the SCK line is connected in parallel. Basically, they are all shorted for every peripheral device, and SCK coming out from the microcontroller. And COPI line gets into the serial mode, where COPI is connected to COPI of the first device and CIPO of the first device is connected to the COPI of the second device, peripheral device, and then it keeps on repeating until it reaches the last peripheral, SPI compatible peripheral. So this daisy chaining method actually reduces the total number of connections, because here, unlike there are many chip select lines, here you have only one chip select line, like the which is having again common connection between all the peripheral devices. That means all peripherals are simultaneously activated, and you transfer a longer string of data or longer stream of data with a lot more clocks. Suppose you want to reach some signal to this device, you have to clock it. Let's say this is n equal to 3. In such case, 3 into 8 times clock should be applied over here. Whereas in the previous case, so the advantage here is that if you want to communicate to any one of the devices, only 8 clocks are enough to communicate to a single byte. But to communicate a single byte in case of the second case, you will have to apply 8 into the number, peripheral number. So that much clock. So if you want to send something to single byte to peripheral 2, you have to first transfer it to COPI of this first one. That means you need 8 clock cycles here. Then during another 8 clock cycle, you have to shift it back to the COPI. So that means there is a shift register which comes into picture over here. So it first shifts into the first peripheral, then it shifts out and then shifts in to the second peripheral. So there are 16 clock cycles required to transfer 1 byte information to peripheral 2. Now if you keep on shifting towards right, so then you have to multiply the peripheral number into 8 just to transfer 1 byte of information. So this is a slower method, daisy chaining, but it requires less hardware lines. Whereas the previous method is a relatively faster method, but it takes more space and more hardware connection wires.